Zach LaVine has been in the NBA trade talk purgatory for what feels like forever at this point, but now it seems like with the trade deadline coming up, his value is at an all-time low. Why do teams not want the 29-year-old star who is an almost automatic 25-point per game scorer and a multiple-time All-Star? To find the answer, we have to go back to last season. LaVine has been making about $20 million a year on his previous contract, which was solid, but after his stint on the Timberwolves, it seemed like things would change for him for the rest of his career. With 1 year left on his contract, he would be traded to the Bulls in the 2017 offseason in what would be known as the Jimmy Butler trade, and would end up signing to Chicago in the offseason with that previously mentioned $20 million a year over 4 years. These 4 years would be massive for LaVine as he would blossom into the player that we know now, getting up to an all-star level and hovering around that 25-5-5 level. So what went wrong? LaVine's new contract is currently giving him around $40 million a year over 5 years, a max contract. This at the time made sense. Chicago had found who they thought would be their star player, and he had been playing like that, making 2 All-Star games in 2020 and 2021. During this time, the Bulls had many lottery picks and went out and traded for DeMar DeRozan and Nikola Vucevic. And during the 21-22 season, the Bulls looked like a real contender, finishing the season with the 6th seed. The only problem, they would run into the defending champion Milwaukee Bucks. Game 1 would be a close loss, but they would take Game 2 on the road, and going back home, there was some hope for the Bulls. They would end up being blown out in the final 3 games and returned back to reality. Despite this loss, there was some hope, as they had many young players, including Lonzo Ball, Ayo Dosunmu, and Patrick Williams. The Bulls have not returned to the playoffs since then, and part of this is due to Zach LaVine. LaVine held up his scoring last season but failed to make the All-Star team, which doesn't really matter too much in the long-term sense if the team's focus is on winning, but his stats across the board have continued to drop since his first All-Star season in the 2021 season. This is really where LaVine started to hit the trade block rumors on his departure from Chicago. With the team's young players like Lonzo Ball, Patrick Williams, and Ayo all really not living up to their potential, whether that be injuries or just not panning out, it seemed like the team needed to make a change. Last year around this time, it seemed like many teams were interested in LaVine as he was still young and showed that he could be an all-star level player, which a contender could plug and play with another star level player. So what has changed from last year until now? Well, there are 3 main reasons: contract, injuries, and defense. Starting with the first, which is the contract. LaVine is currently the 8th highest paid player in the NBA, tied with players like Luka Doncic and Trae Young, and he is making more than LaMelo Ball, Anthony Edwards, and Tyrese Halliburton, and Joel Embiid. LaVine is a good player, but looking at the options listed here, he is not playing like the 8th best player in the NBA right now, nor does he show signs of evolving into a player of the same caliber as a Trae Young or Luka Doncic, and you could make the argument that he won't even be able to evolve into the same player as Ball, Edwards, or Halliburton could be, and that's without even mentioning Joel Embiid, who he's making more money than, who is on his way to be a 2-time MVP. If you're a team looking to make a trade and you see 3 elite level players making less money than LaVine, while 2 of them are 6 years younger, I would see the hesitation from the organization to make that move. Do I think LaVine deserved the max when he was offered? Yes. Does it look bad now? Also yes. But at the time, LaVine did seem like the guy who could be a consistent star level player in the league. I guess it depends on how you view a player as a star, as a 25-point per game scorer would be enough for some fans, but with his recent decline, I could see the argument in the other direction. The main reason why teams are out on LaVine at this current moment is his injuries. LaVine has appeared in only 25 of the team's 44 games thus far this season, and it seems like he could be out another week or so with an ankle injury. Over his career, LaVine has had 2 knee surgeries and has had a long-time injury bug dealing with his ankles, missing multiple games throughout multiple years. These injuries are enough to keep a team weary, as LaVine isn't getting any younger at 28 years old, which is still young and could mean that he's about to enter his prime, but not if he can stay on the floor. He's dealing with an ankle injury as of this recording, and that could affect his trade value, as the logistics trading for him just wouldn't make sense right now if he's hurt. It should keep him out for about a week, but if it continues to linger, it would be less convincing for a team to trade for a player that's currently injured or just coming back from an injury. Last reason is defense. LaVine is more of a mid to bottom of the league defender looking at his defensive rating, and the Bulls have actually had a better defensive rating when he's not playing, which is not a good selling point for him. Defense is not the end-all be-all of playing in the NBA in the modern day, as we've seen recently with many players who lack defensive prowess making it up on the offensive end. But like I mentioned before, his performance, which has recently been subpar and him not even being on the court, there's definitely some question marks around his defense, as he's not putting up 30 plus points like we see with some of the top end players in the NBA who struggle defensively. When we bring up a guy like I talked about a few weeks ago, like Tyrese Halliburton, his offensive output is good enough to make up for that lack of defense. Zach LaVine, I just don't think is at that point right now. Zach LaVine won't get traded? No, not necessarily. LaVine is still being talked about in teams' trade bubbles, including the Lakers and the 76ers, but it seems like as the days go on, the idea of trading for LaVine has almost passed. Coming out of the Lakers camp, it seems like they have already passed on LaVine due to a mix of injuries and his contract. A direct quote coming from there, Zach LaVine of the Chicago Bulls is not considered an option at this point, and league sources told ESPN. The reasons are varied, with injuries already costing him 18 games this season, his production failing to translate to team success in Chicago, and nearly $90 million guaranteed to him in the next 2 years, with an additional $49 million player option for 26-27. There's just too much risk involved for LA. The Sixers also seem to be out of the mix as they try to target players like Bojan Bogdanovic, Tyus Jones, and Alex Caruso. With those players, the Sixers and Lakers both feel like they know what they're getting. Role players are known as role players because they play a role, and that's why they're always targets at the deadline, because contenders know what they're getting. LaVine has shown that he is closer to an all-star than a role player, but at this current moment, the water is murky, and the risk is probably higher than the reward. In both teams' cases, the Lakers have a lot of money already wrapped up, and the Sixers would benefit from trading for a star in the offseason because they receive more first-round picks in the offseason, with 2 of their future second-round picks becoming first-round picks. LaVine can still play at a high level, but it seems like he is going to end the season on the Bulls unless a third team kind of comes out of nowhere to snag him at the deadline. He could be traded in the offseason, with teams hoping that they could get him at full strength and have him mesh into a team with a full offseason, but for now, it seems like the former All-Star will stay in the Windy City. Now, with all this speculation, we really don't know what's going to happen until the trade deadline, but if I had to place a bet, I would assume that Zach LaVine will stay on the Bulls for the rest of this season, but like I said, he could be traded in the offseason. Maybe teams want to make sure he's completely healthy or give him a full training camp, but let me know down below. Do you think Zach LaVine will be traded at the deadline? Do you think he will get traded in this upcoming offseason, or do you think he's kind of just stuck on the Bulls for the rest of his career? Let me know down below, and make sure you guys go down and subscribe and like this video, and I will see you guys in the next one.